everybody, and thank you for joining me on my channel to view this video. Today we're going to do the check-in on the Indian blue worm bin, where 4 days ago I put canned organic pumpkin on one end and a homemade sort of worm chow on the other end. And I put a video out and I asked you all to comment on which of the two food sources did you think would attract the most worms. And I didn't think either of the two foods would be gone, but it was, would there be more worms at the pumpkin or at the worm chow, or would it be equally distributed? So while I've wanted to peek in on this bin in the last few days, I have refrained. I haven't even lifted the cardboard to look, so we're going to do that together now. The majority of the responses said the pumpkin would attract the bigger percentage of worms, and there was even one comment that said they expected the pumpkin, or that the pumpkin might be gone and then the worms would have to go over to the chow. Me, I'm not very experienced with worm chow. I don't make it, I don't feed it normally. These were expired grains from a long-term food storage in my basement that I was cleaning out. So since I wasn't going to eat them myself, I decided to try it as this. So if you remember, this lid is the lid to the pureed pumpkin can to indicate that's the side we fed the pumpkin on. And on the opposite end over right along here is where the worm chow is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the camera a little bit over here so we can see the worm chow side. I'm going to dig that up first. And of course there's not going to be any way to count these worms to know which side got exactly more. If it's close, we're going to have to call it close, but we should be able to tell just by a worm ball or lack thereof which side has attracted worms. So let's go in here and see what we find. And again, this is the worm chow side. Okay, so they're definitely there. You can see here the happy collection of worms. Now I'll just remind you all that there is about a dozen red wigglers in this bin somewhere. They will come out once the bin is full, but I'm not concerned. All right, let me keep getting along this side here. So you can see there's a pretty good collection of them here as well. Let me keep moving along. My phone battery is very low, so I'm hoping I can get this done before it dies. Oh yes, I definitely feel worms. Okay, so as we move along, you can see here lots and lots of happy worms. So we haven't checked the other side yet, but I would say this worm chow, which is absolutely not gone, has collected quite a few worms. Let me see if I can more or less put them, they're already scurrying to the bottom, of course, but I mean, it definitely was an attractive food source for them, as you can see. So now I'm going to move the camera to the other side. Let's look at the pumpkin. Okay, I need to approach the pumpkin side a little differently because of the angle of the bin and the camera. So again, the lid was an indicator of where the pumpkin was. And we do just like I did at the other side. And let me scratch the surface. I think this is, no, that actually is an Indian blue worm. All right, let me just start. No, it isn't actually. All right, let me start turning over this side here. This is the pumpkin. Now I can see some of the pumpkin here still left, but there's not as many worms here at all. Let me try to turn this a little bit more so y'all can see in here. Uh-oh, I did something. Hold on. Okay, let me continue down. So there's a good collection of worms there. Now let me continue further down in the bin still, down to the end, because in both foods I put it from one end to the other. Okay, so here's another handful turned over. All right, so I mean there's a decent amount of worms there. Let me get right down here into the corner. Okay. Okay, I've just rotated the camera and the bin a little bit so we can take another look in this pumpkin side. Because I was expecting to see more worms on the pumpkin end than I did. And I want to make sure I was giving it a fair look. Let me get another scoop. I'll go out a little bit further this time because I don't remember exactly how far out the pumpkin went. Alright, I'm going to do another scoop down this side. Alright, and then let's do just one more going out a little bit further. Now, one thing I notice, and I'm sure you do too, which some of the commenters said, other than that very initial scoop, which was down here somewhere, there was a tiny piece of pumpkin left. The rest of the pumpkin is gone. I don't see any more of it, and that was 2 cans of pumpkin. So it may be that the viewers who said they're going to eat the pumpkin and then head to the chow are absolutely right. So it's possible that yesterday or the day prior there were more worms down this end, and then they slowly had to head down there. That's not where the pumpkin is. I just moved the lid for the sake of looking. So let me rotate this bin back around here, folks. And we're going to take another look at the worm chow side. Because there is, if you remember, or if you look, there is quite a bit of chow left in here because it is a slower food. So I think, though, there may be some actually in the middle of the bin heading down this way because they consumed the pumpkin and now they're going to the chow. And they're not going to be as congregated as they were the first time I dug them up, of course, because worm balls scatter. It's a little dry down this end, which makes complete sense because the pumpkin is a much moister food. So if my theory is correct about the worms finishing the food and heading down to this end, the pumpkin end, there would be some in the middle, kind of on their way, making the great journey, which looks to be exactly the situation. I expect to find a few worms, not in the food itself, but to see this many in the middle, where there's absolutely no food, they are on their way down this side. So the conclusion of this feeding is that the majority of the viewers were correct. The worms went to the pumpkin. Well, they went to both food sources, but clearly, since the pumpkin is gone, they went there first and devoured that. I didn't check on in between to see how many worms were at each end. But the fact that the pumpkin's completely gone and that there's a bit of worms in the middle and now a pretty large congregation in the chow tells me right in line with they ate the pumpkin and decided to go to greener pastures, as they say, right? And went down here to the chow, which actually there's such a small amount of it left as well. I can feel it a little bit. Like, oh, I just stuck my foot in the dog water bowl. Oh, that felt great. I can feel it a little bit, but they definitely ate. They ate a lot, actually. I mean, in 4 days, they ate 2 cans of organic pumpkin, and they ate a pretty sizable portion of, I'm calling it worm chow. It was just mixed grains of, it was oats and buckwheat, actually, is what it was. So, of course, now they're all scattered. So, okay, that's it. I'm going to say those who said pumpkin were correct. Those who said pumpkin and then moved down to the worm chow were also correct, because I think both happened. I think initially they probably went to the pumpkin end, which explains why it's completely gone, ate it, and they are now onto the chow or on their way to the chow. So that's it, guys. You guys are, your worm's pretty good because you were correct. So now what I need to do is add more food to both ends again, because I want to start preparing this bedding for finalization, or preparing the bin rather, excuse me, to be fully harvested, because all that's left, there's a little bit of leaves. So with 1 or 2 food only non-bedding feedings, these worms are gonna finish up this bin so I can harvest it. And I mentioned in my last video, I don't wait for every particle to be gone. I'm not selling my castings. I use it in my own garden. And leaving a little bit of unfinished browns, be it cardboard or leaves, is actually beneficial to the garden, because it continues to feed whatever worms may have escaped the sifting, or whatever cocoons may have hatched that I missed. And it also attracts other outdoor worms and aids in maintaining more moisture. So I don't, if I was selling it, yes, it would need to be free of seeds and free of unfinished bedding. But for my purposes, it doesn't need to be. I'll certainly have it more finished than it is, but I think one more good feeding and that will do it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to put the pumpkin again down the end, down there where it was. And I'm going to put more worm chow down this end where it was. However, instead of waiting 4 days, this time I'm going to check back in 2 days. So today's Saturday. On Monday, we'll check to see which end has the most worms, because there will be food of both types left in only 2 days, I'm sure. Or I think I'm sure. Never know with Indian blue worms. And we will be able to see the worm balls then. It also needs a little moisture. All right, guys. Well, thanks for viewing. Thanks for leaving your comments. So now, since there's going to be an update on Monday showing the actual worm collection at the two foods, again, what do you think? Will there be more worms at the pumpkin end, or will there be more worms at the worm chow end? Keep in mind right now there's a bunch in the middle that can choose to go in either direction. And let me know what you think. Leave a comment below with your predictions, please. And if you enjoy this video, would you please give it a thumbs up? And if you're not subscribed to my channel, please do so. Double check that you're subscribed to my channel, because YouTube has a glitch in it where people are being unsubscribed without purposely doing it. And share the channel, share the video if it's something you think someone else would enjoy. And most importantly, stay healthy and have a wonderful weekend, everybody. I will be following up on this on Monday. Until then, have a happy day. Bye.